Westward Ho! Yes, yes. Oh yeah.
For people who don't know, that's the road that Summerhill's on, actually. Someone's actually on a road called Westward Ho, so somebody sent a message from Westward Ho.
Yeah, so that's very local, very local.
Very, very local.
So we've got all corners of the globe, all from around the world, and from our doorstep as well.
Good stuff.
Really lovely. Yeah, really lovely. Yeah, Maro, I'm sure you're keeping busy in getting people in.
Yes, I'm getting people in. I started to record and now I'm preparing the live.
Lovely. Okay, great, great. Yeah, good. Well, it's lovely. We've got our staff members here. We've got some of our staff members. The team that keeps Summerhill afloat are here as well. We've got ex-staff members who have helped keep Summerhill afloat from years by as well. So that's lovely. We've got ex-pupils.
We got some parents and past parents as well.
Parents and past parents, and we've got some ex-pupils as well.
Oh, cool.
I'm sure we'll find some present pupils as well if we looked at some. We've got everybody, I think.
Everybody in the whole world.
Everybody in the whole world. Many doing lots of wonderful things all around the whole world as well, and that's also amazing.
Robin. Nicht schlimm, ich versage hier wieder mal.
Oh, we had an unmute for a moment, but we're all right.
Even how come you've got such good light and I've got such rubbish light? I've got light shining straight on me and I can't get. Oh well.
Oh, we've got Peter Gray as well. Lovely to see you, Peter.
Great to be here, Henry. Wow, what a group.
What a lovely little, well, it's a little digital celebration. Hey, that's, I guess, the advantage. Oh, I won't say necessarily the advantage of the situation, but it's lovely that we're all getting online, people all around the world. Yeah. Really lovely.
Hello, Peter. I'm not actually sure if we've actually met, have we?
We have not. Wonderful to see you.
How do you do?
Yeah. Yeah, I think Peter, with many times we've spoken about the idea of having you visit Summerhill. It's a to-do list. It's on the to-do list.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's certainly on my to-do list.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Hi. I'm trying to get some light on, like I've got my room light on, I've got my phone.
Who's that?
Let's see.
Oh, we've got Para here. Hi, Para. Lovely. Oh, we've got Kostas as well. Ayana. Yeah. Ooh. Oh, we've got people from around the world. Oh, yeah.
Come on, Henry. Should we kick off? 5 past?
Yeah, yeah. Should we make a bit of a start? I was just seeing, I think, I've just seen, we've got Kate Robinson as well. Kate, lovely to have you. Thank you so much for coming.
Hello, Kate. Can't see where she is, but
she's on page 4 at the moment. I'm sort of skimming through.
Hi, everyone.
Oh yes, I see. With the pink behind you. Hello.
With the big pink light.
The big pink light. Lovely, lovely. Okay. Good. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for coming. Obviously, this is a very special time for us. You know, welcome to the launch of, should we say, the Summerhill celebrations of Summerhill's centennial, you know, our 100th birthday. And thank you all so much. And also, this is going to be a bit of a taster event for the Summerhill Festival of Childhood. And so we're going to have a bit of a panel discussion later on with Zoe, Peter Gray, Ian Cunningham, and Kate Robinson. and we're doing a draw as well. So someone will get some lucky person will get a free ticket to the festival. I know, yeah, that's why you're all here. You're not here for the Centenary, you're here for the free ticket. So yeah, so that's happening as well. And we're going to give you a little bit more information about the festival and what's going to be happening throughout the year. And obviously to be celebrating 100 years of Summerhill School, and what an important moment this is. Obviously for Summerhill School itself, the fact that we've managed to survive 100 years, but I think also more importantly, to a certain extent, the impact that Summerhill has had on the world, and what the work that we do here, and all of the other amazing, phenomenal work that happens around the world all the time, of people who are working to alleviate pressures from childhood and celebrate freedom and equality and community and all of these lovely words, free play, and the period of time of childhood and how important that is to us all. We're going to kick off. So me and Zoe, my mother Zoe, I might call her mum sometimes. Just, well, you know, that happens. You know, I've got to make sure I behave myself because my mother's here looking over me, yes. So we're going to kick off a little bit talking about Summerhill School and the Centenary, and a little bit of what it means to us at the moment, and then we'll move on. I think we'll invite Ian and Peter to come and share a few words, if they will, about the maybe the sort of the impact that Summerhill has had on the world, and we'll have a bit of a chat. And it's just so lovely, so lovely to see you all. Thank you all so much for coming. It really does mean so much to us. And also the people who are online. I know this is also being streamed, so we can't see everybody, but lots and lots of love to you all. Okay, Zoe, so shall we make a bit of a start? I think we thought that we'd start off with that lovely bit that you wrote. Do you want to?
I have a short bit here that I just wrote, actually just wrote it for a local newspaper, but it's a very short sort of introduction about Summerhill's birthday. So this year, 2021, marks a happy 100th birthday to Summerhill School. Founded in 1921 by Scottish educational pioneer A.S. Neil, 1883 to 1973, who was widely considered to be one of the great educators of the time. UNESCO lists him as one of the 100 most influential educational thinkers, and he was also listed as one of 12 greatest educators of the last millennium by a UK national broadsheet newspaper in December 1999. He founded his school Summerhill in 1921, based upon his own education philosophy. After all the battles, all the doubts, all the mean-spirited media coverage, A.S. Neil's system of education has survived. Not only survived, but it has thrived. Neil believed in the innate goodness of children and set out to build a school to fit the child rather than to mold the child to fit the school. He believed that children can learn to make important decisions in their lives and to take the path that they feel fits them best, following their own rhythm at their own speed. Allowing his children to make their own choices about classes, Neil saw them work with huge motivation and determination to achieve whatever they wanted to achieve. This self-motivation meant that the children could learn at a remarkable rate when they were truly interested and understood the purpose behind it. Neil broke down the idea that only those who were academic achievers were successes in life. He believed that everybody has something to offer society in whatever form they choose. He agreed that learning is important, but not to everybody. What is more important is to take joy in what we do. A.S. Neil once wrote, "It is ludicrous that a man who can do skilled handwork should feel inferior to a university professor who may not be able to mend a puncture. Ludicrous that a ploughman who can make a perfect stack or a straight furrow should rank lower in culture than a teacher." I think that pretty well sums up how we feel about Summerhill and its birthday. I just want to add a little bit to what Henry was saying. You know, this this is Summerhill's birthday and it's a huge triumph for Summerhill and for A.S. Neil, but actually it's not about that. It's a triumph for anybody, anywhere who believes that children should be treated better, so that children should have rights, that children should be allowed to follow their own path and have a proper childhood and play and just be children. And so I think, you know, whatever anybody's doing throughout the world, however much they use that model and however much they don't, it's great for all of you to be able to turn around to those who argue with you, those who disbelieve you, and say, look, there's proof. Summerhill's been there for 100 years and it's been doing exactly the same thing for those 100 years. It hasn't compromised on its philosophy. So it isn't really just Neil's triumph and Summerhill's triumph. It's actually everybody's triumph who believes in this kind of, I won't say education necessarily, but this kind of attitude towards children and childhood and to education.
I think, you know, I was talking to Zoe a little bit just before this, and there's something that is so simple. There's something that's so simple and beautiful about the idea that children have freedom and just have a happy childhood, and how important that is. And that you know, that obviously we find happiness in many ways. There's so much to it, but the simplicity and if Zoe, do you mind just reading the other little part? Would you like to read the other little bit now? Because I just feel it will resonate really strongly with the conversation we had before.
From our booklet?
Yeah, from the booklet. Yeah.
We have a new booklet, which, I mean, it's not a commercial thing and it's not a school prospectus, but it's actually a really, really lovely way to introduce Summerhill. And the bit on play, we'll just read you this. It says, arrive on any day at Summerhill and the first thing you will see are children playing. Spontaneous, wonderful play. They play indoors, they play outside, they play the right way up and they play upside down. Some games are sensible and seem to have a point. Some are totally silly in every way. Playing is what Summerhill children do, like kittens tumbling out of a box. And when you tell a visiting child the basics of Summerhill, the first thing they say is, you mean I don't have to go to lessons? And then they run off and start playing. Watching them, free-range children, doing what children are supposed to do is one of those epiphany moments. The capacity for it and the need for the company of other children is amazing. How on earth do children in conventional situations ever manage to control this all-pervading, powerful urge?
Yeah, and that's something, you know, it's I don't know. I think I could say that in any pupils who have come to Summerhill, and of course this is talking specifically about Summerhill, but actually it's not. It's talking about the importance of play and how we all resonate with these things. We all see these wonderful, beautiful situations that are happening in schools around the world that are implementing, you know, that are creating more freedom for children and homeschooling environments, unschooling environments, all of these different places, all these different things around the world where people are working to alleviate pressures. To a certain extent, there's a real simplicity. There's a real beautiful simplicity to play and to children playing. And I think that's something in the Summerhill community. It's what we see every day. That's, you know, in the end, that's what happens. Children are just off playing, and you know, you can write about it and books and everything, but in the end, there's something so magical about that, and so simple, and so purely simple. Yeah. Okay, so now obviously Summerhill has also had a huge impact around the world. Obviously A.S. Neil's writings, books, millions of books were sold globally. It's, well, arguably one of the most inspirational schools in the world. I mean, there's many people, whether they're teachers in state system, whether they're children, whether they're parents, whether they're educators, whether they're researchers. There are many people around the world who have been inspired by these sort of ideas. And I'm not saying obviously that these ideas have purely come from Summerhill. There's many wonderful work that's being done all the time that are moving more in the direction that this style of education, or even these sort of attitudes around childhood, are becoming more prominent and more evidently important. And And so I would like to, you know, if we could have a few minutes. We've got Peter Gray and Ian Cunningham. I wonder whether if any of you have got anything you'd like to share. Ian Cunningham, I know that you are involved with the court case. You've had interlinks and you've helped us on many occasions. We have much love for you and your work, the work you've done. And I know also the wonderful work you do down in Brighton. So I just wondered if you have do you want to sort of say a few words, if you have anything you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I can only concur with the comments both you and Zoe have mentioned. I visited Summerhill first, Henry, when your grandmother was the principal in 1975. And I came with a student who was doing a project on Summerhill because we were trying to promote more freedom in higher education. That's why I was involved. And Beacon Summerhill's been a beacon, a kind of shining light throughout that whole period for so many people, and for me and for others who tried to promote the notions of freedom for children and counter what we have to face in the educational world. I actually got out of that world for a long time because I just couldn't bear to deal with what was happening in school and the horrible oppression that was put upon young people, and the fact that having seen it in Summerhill, and as you said, the freedom and the joy and the pleasure of people engaging with each other in the kind of way that they can do in that school. And so I stayed out of the education world for a long time and only was back in it, in fact, because of the court case issue, and wanted to support you. So it's just wonderful that we've got this 100th anniversary, because it's just fantastic, and it's important that you'll go on for another 100 years.
Well, that is our plan. Thank you very much, Ian. That is our plan. Hopefully, you know, day by day. I think that's how we've survived so far, is we you know, take each step as we come. Yeah. Lovely. Thank you so much, Ian. Thank you. So yeah, Peter, would you like to join us?
I would. I'll try to be quick, but I've got a story to tell. When A.S. Neal's book Summerhill hit the market in the United States, my mother was teaching in a little public school in Cabot, Vermont, a school I had already graduated from, but my younger brothers were still students there. She was so moved by the book, and it struck such a chord with her that she resigned from her job of teaching in that school and started a little free school in the nearby town of Plainfield, Vermont. Now, it turned out there was a young student at Goddard College in Plainfield named Jerry Mintz. And she invited Jerry Mintz to come over and work with her and start in this school. And so Jerry Mintz, who you may all know now as the person who went on and has been running AERO, the Alternative Education Resources Organization, he got his start working with my mom. Now, I was already a student in New York City in college. I was the square one in the family, much more square than my mom, much more square than my younger brothers. I thought this was kind of interesting. I read Neal's book and set it aside and went on with my studies. But then later on, when I had my own child, and my own child was really struggling in school, I remembered what my mom did, which was so helpful to my youngest brother when he went to that school. And so I scouted around and found the Sudbury Valley School, and my son went there, and it absolutely changed my career. So ever since then, I've been studying self-directed. The square one in the family, have been studying self-directed education in a very square way, and writing about it and writing about play. So I'm sure this is just one of many, many stories about how A.S. Neal's and his writing have impacted the world, and that impact is still going on. I still think the real fruition of this is yet to come.
Mm-hmm. And thank you very much, Peter, for that. And it resonates a bit with me. I did a talk in a local college, a teacher training course, and there was the leader of the teacher training course was pointing out a specific teacher that she was just saying, this teacher has to come and work at Summerhill. He's so amazing, the way that he connects with the kids and the way that he does all his phenomenal work. And he's you know, he really needs to come and work at Summerhill because he resonates so well with what you were doing. And I was saying, no, we don't want him at Summerhill. We want to keep him where he is because he's doing wonderful, wonderful work. And, you know, I think that I've heard many stories, and Zoe, I'm sure you would have as well, of people who have changed their ways, and sometimes it's not easy if you're working in the state system. Sometimes you're only making a 5%. You're relating to the kids a bit better. The way you're looking at education, the way you're looking at childhood, and the way you're interacting with the children and resonating with them and enjoying and trying to get, under the restrictions to a certain extent, trying to get some work out of it. And I think that this is something that I, it's not just a few people who have been inspired. There's many people who read the books and it changes them, their ways of thinking about it. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah,
Zoe,
I was just putting my hand up in the Summerhill meeting.
I
was going to say, one of the striking things for me over the years has been that, obviously I get a lot of mails from all over the world. I get different things now because of the different way of communicating, but the people don't write to me and say, I read your father's book and I really enjoyed it. They write to me and they say, I read your father's book and it changed my life. And, there's so many people who have done that it's astounding, really. Anyway, not too much packing, eh?
So I'm just going to, this is, I don't know, I'm sure some people would have heard this quote, and I'm sure some people by the end of this year will probably get very bored by it, because it's kind of our centenary, to a certain extent, it's our centenary quote. It's in the back of the booklet, but we're sort of using this quote specifically. And so I just want to read this out. It says, the future of Summerhill itself may be of little import, but the Summerhill idea is of the greatest importance to humanity. New generations must be given the chance to grow in freedom. The bestowal of freedom is the bestowal of love, and only love can save the world. Now, I think that what I really love about this quote is it's not about us. It's about children. It's about childhood. It's about humanity. It's about all of the work that we are doing or that we're trying to do, and the message that we're putting out, really, and that love can save the world. It's quite simple, really. Love can do wonders, and yeah. So, okay, lovely. Okay, so I'm a bit mindful of time. So I'm going to move on a little bit. Zoe, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I'm overwhelmed with people's feelings and love towards Summerhill and Neil, and it's just wonderful. And I'm going to start to cry, so stop it. Go away.
Okay, an emotional moment, everybody. There's a live emotional moment happening on Zoom here. Bless you, Mum. Good. Okay. Yeah, I think yes, I think I will have the opportunity to sort of, Zoe, obviously Neil bringing Summerhill up until the 70s, and my grandmother Ina then taking it over for 12 years or so, and Zoe has been driving the ship and keeping the ship afloat. And so I sort of feel it's a nice opportunity to give some love to Zoe for the amazing work that she's done in keeping Summerhill where it is. So I think I don't know if we can do a silent round of applause or just a big hug and just general love.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I'm sure it has, exactly. Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, little hands. We can see. Yeah, the digital silent applause, which is lovely. Thank you all so much. Okay, so we obviously the Centenary of Summerhill, this is, you know, we're not necessarily calling this a birthday party because it's a birthday year, really. It's quite funny that over the times when we've been talking about Summerhill School, we've been trying to figure out the exact date that the school started. And probably we've ended up with about 5 or 6. Some people have said, well, it's in January. Some people have said it's in December. And well, it was 100 years ago. Let's just celebrate for the whole year rather than finding a specific birthday. This has kind of been our mentality a little bit in coming up to the centenary. That we want it to be a year of celebration, really. And most importantly, we want to be inviting everybody from around the world who have been inspired by A.S. Neil, or even if they haven't been inspired and they've only just heard about A.S. Neil and they're doing lots of wonderful work and they're working to alleviate pressures from children. And they're, you know, if you're out there and you're doing lovely things, then we're inviting everybody to celebrate, really. Celebrate childhood and what childhood means to all of us and what childhood needs. You know, having a fulfilled childhood is a very important part. Happy and fulfilled childhood, I'll say. So we're wanting to invite everybody from around the world. Now, this is also our taster event for the Summerhill Festival of Childhood. Now, the Summerhill Festival of Childhood is, you know, we're sort of saying the culmination of all of the celebration, but actually it's a part. It's a wonderful, wonderful part of the celebrations that we're going to have for the Centenary of Summerhill. And I just, first of all, before I say anything more about it, I really want to give an amazing amount of love and thanks for all of the people who are working to make the festival a reality. It's quite difficult to explain it, really. We have nearly 100 people or so from around the world who are all volunteering their time, who are all, you know, who all have busy lives, who are all doing their own things in their lives, and they're committing time to help to make this event a reality. And it's astounding. It's astounding how much energy and work and love is being put in to help this event. Now, we wanted the event to be focused purely about childhood. We didn't want it to be focused on a specific methodologies on education. We want everybody to feel welcome. We want everybody to feel united around the importance of childhood and what it means to all of us. So the first thing, I'm going to announce a very important bit of information here, everybody. I would do a drum roll, but I haven't got drumsticks. I'll do a drum roll. That the organization team have officially now decided, that we're going to be extending the period of time of celebration into the summer of 2022. So, and this is for very obvious reasons. I'm sure everybody would realize the reasons for this, but we are going to be having the festival. We're changing the date of the festival to summer 2022. Now, we're looking at this in a very positive way because it means we can have a lot more celebration between now and the event. And, you know, I think that the other element of it as well is, you know, when we were coming to the decision, we were thinking of all of these really important things that we had to think about. And in the end, it came down to one simple thing. And that was, we need to be able to have more opportunity to be able to hug each other. I think basically we think that the most important thing of this festival is we can get hopefully thousands of people together to have a big mass hugging session. And so I think that we felt that the most important thing was for us to be able to do this. And so we decided that we were going to extend the celebrations into 2022. The date we will officially release very, very shortly. And we'll get back to everybody with more information about that. So what this means is that we're going to be having, well, I would say a year. It's nearly a year and a half of celebration, everybody. I hope you're all ready. A year and a half of celebrating. This is so a few things. First of all, we're going to be hosting an online event, and that will be the summer of 2021. Now, this is not to replace the festival. The festival will take place in 2022, but we're going to host a lovely online event in 2021. We will give more information about this soon, because the decision to extend the celebrations only happened recently, and so we'll give everybody much more detail very, very soon on what's actually going to happen with the online event in 2021. But so far, summer 2021 is when the online event will take place. But also another very important part of this, and I'll share my screen in a few minutes to show you, but we want to spend the year really celebrating and inviting everybody to celebrate with us. And this can be, you can bring, you can have a Summerhill Festival of Childhood in your own home, or you can just, you can make a lovely cake, or you can, if the restrictions are alleviated for you, you can get together and have a little, little gathering with some people in your classroom, in your schools, or whatever it is you want to do. We want to invite everybody from around the world to celebrate with us. The importance of childhood, the importance of having a fulfilled and happy childhood, and 100 years of Summerhill School. So we're inviting you to do that in whichever way. That's your, you can figure out what works best for you. And so I'm going to just quickly now, hopefully if this works smoothly, I'm going to share my screen. Let me see if this works. Have we got this all right? Yeah. Okay. Oh, I've got all sorts of tabs up. So I just want to share with you, whether you've seen or not, you might have already seen it, but we have a new website which is celebrating 100 years of Summerhill School. So the website address is 100yearsofsummerhillschool.co.uk. Now, this website is a community website to a certain extent. It's to be inviting people to come and celebrate 100 years with us. Along the top here, I'm just going to show you. I'll spend a few minutes just showing you over the website. So we have the friends who have already registered. So you can register to the website and you can share your story and share what you're doing, the work that you're doing. We have hundreds of people so far who have already signed up, and we're inviting everybody. If you haven't already signed up, we're inviting you to come and join us. So we've got lots and lots of people who are already a part of it. We have a map where you will show up on the map. Just for a bit of fun, to show well, everybody around. Oh, I've got a little Google thing there. Everybody from around the world who's joining us and celebrating with us. And you've got the option here as well to actually host or start up a little project. So what this is you can register to the website. You can tell us your story, and you can actually start up a little project. And on this page, there is a huge list of lots of people from around the world who are celebrating 100 years of Summerhill School in some form or another. So there's all sorts of things here. I won't go through too many, but I'm just going to highlight the photo of Philip there. Yes, thank you, Philip.
Good one.
Yeah, the house parent. Yeah, Philip, 100 photographs of Summerhill School. We've got spreading the word. There's all sorts of lovely little projects that are ongoing. These are all sorts of different things from people around the world that have been joining and are doing in their own time There's some lovely interviews that have been happening from Summerhill School. One of the children from Summerhill and a staff member have been doing interviews with people around the school. So there's just lots of lovely, lovely stuff. And what we're wanting to do is to invite everybody to think of your own little project, and anything you want to do that you want to be sharing with us, you can come to the website. Another thing I'm just quickly going to talk about, just because this is another exciting project that we're looking to be launching, as well as the A.S. Neal Archive and Research Centre. This is a new project that we're planning to a new build that we're planning to have, that will host Summerhill's official archive. We've been getting lots of lovely material from around the world so far to be doing the archive, and we're starting what's called the A.S. Neal Summerhill CIC, which is a company, a non-profit community interest company, where we're going to be offering courses and school startup support, teacher training programs, people wanting to implement methods into the state system or anywhere else, research collaborative or research projects, to be supporting research projects. So we have lots of lovely bits and pieces. This is we're now launched the company, and this will be coming soon as well. So just for your information, really. But this is another exciting thing that we're doing to be celebrating 100 years of Summerhill School. Good. Okay. So that will. There's also, I will just say, there's also lots of lovely information about Summerhill School. There's lots of lovely information on this website about Summerhill itself. But I'll leave you to all have a little look around and come and join us. So. So from, interlinking with the Summerhill Festival of Childhood, anytime, if there's anything, that if you want to organize your own little event, or if you're doing something fun and silly, and even in your home or whatever it is, and if you would like to interlink it with the Summerhill Festival of Childhood, then please do get in contact with us. If you go to the Summerhill Festival of Childhood website, which is summerhillfestival.com. You can find contact details there, and you can be in touch with us, and to interlink whatever it is, that anything that you feel that you want to be organizing, you can interlink it with us, and we can be sending you some more information, and we can be in touch. Okay, I'm very mindful of time. Sorry, everybody, I keep jumping. Okay, I'm not doing too badly, actually. I'm not doing too badly for time. Okay. So I just want to talk a little bit about the festival itself. We have had interest. The interest has been astounding so far. We are interlinking with many organizations around the world who are all joining forces with us to make this festival a reality. We've got lots of organizations that do lots and lots of lovely practice. I feel I want to start mentioning some names. So we've got the democratic education communities are all joining us. We have Oasis Movement, which is in India. It's some amazing work, who are joining us as well. We have the Phoenix Education Trust, who are joining us. We've also just recently got lovely news that UNESCO's Futures of Education initiative is also going to be participating. So they're also joining us as well. We have also obviously the Alliance for Self-Directed Education and Aero, these lovely organizations from around the world that are doing amazing work. They're all joining forces with us, and many more. I don't want to be sort of limiting or speaking specifically about certain organizations, because we love the idea that with this event we will be having people, all the participants can come and bring, you can come and share your stories, you can do a talk, you can hold a workshop or something like that. We want to be inviting everybody to this lovely festival to be sharing with us. And don't worry, it's definitely not just going to be all about education. and child rearing and this sort of thing. It's also, we want lots of fun stuff. We want lots of music and lots of arts and theatre. And it's going to be a place where people can come and hug, obviously. But people can come and share the wonderful work that they do and be inspired by lots of lovely, lots of wonderful people. Yes, and so this event will take place in 2022. And you're all invited, and all of your friends, and all of their friends, and all of their friends, and all of their friends. I could go on like this for a while. I will stop. But everybody's invited. But if if you feel that you want to share something, if you want to be a part of the festival, if you want to help out, the volunteer team, we've got a wonderful volunteer team, but we always need more people. If you want to contribute to the festival, if you know anybody who might want to sponsor the festival, in any way at all that you feel, obviously you might just want to come and sit on the grass and relax and absorb the atmosphere, and that's fine too. We just want to welcome everybody to come and be a part of this amazing event with us. So, okay.
Add something, Henry.
Yes, of course. So, yeah.
I'm just going to add something for those who don't really know. I mean, the information about the festival will be all over, but I'm just going to say that that the festival is going to be on a field which is about 2 miles away from Summerhill, and it's a lovely big farmer's field. He's had lots. It's not our field, but it's a field of a neighbouring farmer, and he often has festivals on there. But we're trying to create a nice walk across the farmland so that Summerhill can be open all of the time, or certainly during the daytime that the festival's on, so that people can walk there, and we can have a fire light by the woodwork and people can just kind of hang out. I'm not sure if we'd put events on there or not, but to just go and be at Summerhill is something that a lot of people really want to do, and just sit there and kind of touch base with it. And so it will be open, and that will, and we try and make it work so that everybody who wants to just go and be at Summerhill can do that. And maybe we'll have somewhere where you can leave your mark as well, but we'll come to that later.
Yeah. And so officially we are celebrating 100 years of Summerhill School and 101 years of Summerhill School, because this will be part.
How long does the birthday go on?
Exactly. Yeah. So we're inviting you all to join us. And also, literally, just to finish up from me is. To get updates, obviously now that we have had a change of the date, to have updates about what we're going to be offering throughout this year, about what we're going to actually do at the festival and the online event. Please stay connected with our Facebook page, with our YouTube page. We have YouTube as well. We have Twitter, we have Instagram, we have a lovely website. And we're going to be updating everybody very, very soon with lots of amazing information about all of the lovely things happening. Good. So I think on that note, I think I'm about done, really, everybody. And I'm going to hand over to Philip now, who is going to start off our panel discussions. Philip, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for all of you who have joined this Zoom call. There's 346 at the moment. That's a good number. And what we're going to do right now is actually, not I myself, but somebody will take the attendance for the lottery, which will be announced after the panel discussions. So if you are here now, you have a chance of winning the lottery. And when we announce it after the panel discussion, you hopefully are still there as well, because otherwise we will just go to the next person on the list that we draw. But we had asked the public to submit some questions via social media. We asked for big questions, and somebody was sharing, there you go. We asked for big questions, and I have made some questions bigger or put some together, so apologies if your question is slightly changed since you have submitted it, and I'll be posing those to our wonderful panelists. But before we start, well, one, I'm a teacher, so I've got my timer, because we have a time limit, so I will make sure that we are within time limit and we get all our questions answered. But I'd like the panelists just to very briefly maybe introduce themselves and sort of say from what angle they're sort of approaching education, because not everybody is a teacher. I know that, you know, Peter, you have a psychology background, so maybe if everybody has a couple of seconds to sort of say what their connection to the world of education is. Kate, would you like to start? We haven't heard from you yet.
Sure, thank you. Hi, everybody. I am Kate Robinson, and my company Never Grey was the global head office for my father, who was Ken Robinson. And Dad passed away quite suddenly, actually this past August. So we are now completely dedicated to his legacy and carrying that forward. And Henry and Zoe, it's making me laugh watching the dynamic between you two. I could never call Dad in a professional meeting, but I couldn't call him Ken or Sir Ken. That would have just been awful. So I always called him SKR. And then my mum wanted to be LTR. It turned into a very odd dynamic eventually. But yeah, so professionally he was SKR, because then plus, you know, you can sort of, if he's not Dad, you can keep him in a different box and get annoyed with him in a way you can't. Anyway, so my job is to continue his legacy, which I know I'm not doing alone. I haven't had the pleasure yet to come to Summerhill, and it's something Dad and I had talked about doing often. I know that he was hugely influenced by the work of A.S. Neil. And so just to be a part of this is incredible. I believe actually Henry originally, he was invited to take part in the festival as well. And so it's, you know, a double privilege for me to be here today speaking, well, from that angle. So thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Zoe, we all know you quite well already, I think, but.
Well, I'm just here. If you've got any questions, I'll just answer them if I can.
Perfect. Peter.
Yes, hi. I'm a research professor in the Department of Psychology and Neuroscience at Boston College. I have, for many, many years, been studying children's play and other characteristics of childhood, which have to do with the biological foundation for education. I'm an evolutionary psychologist. I'm interested in children's nature and how that nature came about through natural selection and how it plays itself out as children educate themselves.
All right, great, thank you. Ian, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself?
In the 1960s, I was National Secretary of the National Union of Students, and we actually took an interest in Summerhill right back that far, as again, a kind of exemplar of a different way of thinking. And of course, our interest was in higher education, but it was trying to bring that into higher education as well, and students' rights, etc. And that meant in 1973-4, we set up the School for Independent Study in North East London Poly, where people could come and do a degree. We had no entry requirements. People could study literally anything they wanted. And that was the reason I ended up coming to Summerhill in '75, as was one of the students who figured that one of the, I feel like, philosophical bases of what we were doing was Summerhill, and that therefore we, you know, she and I would come and spend some time at Summerhill to learn about how it was actually working out, because we were doing the same kind of thing with adults. And so, you know, and then, I mean, I'm my age, I've done a lot of things in between, spent most of my time doing learning stuff in organizations in the business world, and wanted to keep away from education because it was so awful. I think that my interest is always in about learning, and schools are the least able places to learn in our society, in my experience. That it's easier to work in business to get them to think about learning because they want to do well, and schools are not interested in doing well by children. They're interested in league tables and exams and all that kind of nonsense. So anyway, having come to IDEC in 1999, that stimulated me to parents locally said, well, we want something in our area. So we started to talk to people, and now we've got 40 students based on the south coast of Brighton, where they can learn anything they want in any way they want. There's no curriculum, no timetable, no classes, no anything. And a lot of that's come out of that influence way back from the 1960s.
Thank you, Ian. So we'll start with the first question. I think it links nicely to what you just said about sort of the schools looking towards league tables more than anything else. And it was actually the first question that was posted, and that is, what is the purpose of education? It's probably the biggest question of all, and maybe it could be rephrased as what should be the purpose of education rather than what it is. Kate, would you like to start us off with your thoughts on that one?
I'd love to. I should have said, by the way, it was presumptuous of me. I should have also explained who Dad was, which is just an example of being in my own head all the time. And the reason why that's vaguely significant here. So Dad was an educationalist and a speaker and a writer. He did a TED Talk in 2006 called Do Schools Kill Creativity, which actually is the most downloaded TED Talk of all time, but he advocated so much for the things that Summerhill stand for. He talked about, and I think it's the most beautiful example of a purpose of education that I've come across yet. He was inspired by a book called The Intelligence of Feeling. And in it, they would talk about how we don't live in one world, we live in two worlds. So there's the world that exists only because you exist. It's the world of your internal world that starts because you're born and it ends when you end, depending on what your beliefs are. And then there's the physical world, which is obviously the world that's there, whether or not you're in it. It carries on, whether you were born or whether you weren't, that we hope will continue for a fair bit longer. Dad said that the purpose of education was to educate children about these two worlds, the world within them and the world around them. But crucially, how those two intertwine with each other, how we are, so much of who we are on the inside is inspired and influenced by our experience of the world around us. And how we experience the world around us is shaped so much by who we are on the inside. So that was his take on what the purpose of education is. And I think it's as I said, I think it's one of the most beautiful ones I've come across. But it's a very interesting question, because if you look at the official purpose of education for countries like Finland or Japan or Canada, they have beautiful statements around raising children holistically to become well-rounded citizens who can contribute to society. And if you look at places like the UK and the US, it's very much economic. It's a pathway to the labour force. But it's such an important conversation to have, because I think often when we talk about education and why we do it, we all think we're having the same conversation, but actually quite often we're not, because we have different opinions on what the purpose of education is. And certainly if your purpose of education is that you want to raise a generation that can sit quietly in offices or in factory lines, then you need a certain type of education to prepare them. If you want a different type of result, then you need a different type of education.
Thank you, Kate. Peter, have you got thoughts on the purpose of education?
Yeah, I'll answer that by giving my definition of education, which has the purpose built into it. To me, what education is it's the sum total of everything that a person learns that helps that person to live a satisfying and meaningful and moral life. I separate the concept of education from the concept of schooling. Education is basically the learning of things that are helpful to you. And that's the purpose of it. And certainly from a biological perspective, that has to be the purpose of it.
Thank you. Zoe?
I don't really have a view on education, because I don't actually know what it means, the word education or the whole concept of education. For me, I guess from what you're saying, Peter, I would go with that, in that it's what you want to learn and what you want to know. But the very word education implies that someone is giving you that information. So I think that also from what Kate was saying, it's the way people use the word. So I just forget about the word education. It's not in my dictionary at the moment. I want to talk about childhood and play and growing and learning for yourself and following your own path in life. And so education's on the bookshelf behind me at the moment, and I'm not opening that book.
Can I add to that quickly?
Yeah,
would that be all right? Just to say, I completely agree with both of those statements, that there's a big difference between learning, which is what everybody does, every child does naturally, that you can't stop happening, and happens whether or not you get involved with it. There's education, which, as I understand it, is more the formal systems that help learning to take place within a certain dynamic. And then there's schools, which are places where that happens, where education happens. But you're quite right. Often when we talk about it, I think we very much confuse those three terms. And yeah, because you have no control of whether or not learning happens. I think the best education do is try and shape what learning happens, and schools do their best, I think, to try and create circumstances in which learning happens.
Thank you. Yeah, lucky we didn't call it the Festival of Education. It's a Ian, any comments on the purpose of education?
I was once at a conference and in a discussion group with 3 professors of philosophy of education, and they all agreed that it was about people becoming, I think, something around autonomous people being able to live within the society in which they're in. I then suggested, well, if people want to become autonomous, shouldn't children be autonomous in order to be able to become autonomous? That means and ends had to link. They thought this was a totally stupid idea. So I kind of gave up. That was one of my giving up on education, that I just, so I kind of go with you. So I mean, education is a thing. We get education, whereas we don't say get learning, and I'm interested in the processes, and I'm interested in how young people become free people in a free society. And those restrictions on freedom are all around us, and it's at one level an impossible aim, but it's definitely not about how you accumulate stuff that the word education has come to mean.
All right, thank you. So the next question that was posed in a few different ways is one that's quite relevant to all of us now. And it has to do with the pandemic that we find ourselves in, and the reason that the festival is happening a bit later than initially planned. And I suspect there is many parents here, but a parent wanted to know, what are the biggest challenges for children and parents during this pandemic, and what might be some ways to help cope with those challenges? It's almost a bit like asking for advice, what could be done, or how can that situation be made better? Peter, do you want to start off with that, with the psychology background?
Yeah, it turns out that I've been part of a group that conducted a major survey in the United States of how families with children are coping, how the children are coping, how the parents are coping. We conducted this survey twice, once a month after schools were locked down, and again 2 months after. We surveyed 1,600 families in each survey of families that had children between 8 and 13. The first thing I can say is that children and parents were coping, all in all, a lot better than most people believed. That in fact, we heard from the parents, my children are getting enough sleep now. They don't have to get up so early. They're more well rested. Conflicts between me and my child have decreased since this time. Not surprising, because I think many conflicts have to do with school. We found that the children were finding new or having time to take part in hobbies and interests that they already had. The biggest challenge to the children, the main thing that was difficult for them, no surprise, is not being able to be in physical contact with their friends. Friends are so important to children. This was without question the biggest. And in fact, when we asked them, what do you miss about school? 87% of them said school. Something like 3% said they missed a teacher. Something like 5% said they missed something else about school. I'm going to be publishing the results of this in the American Journal of Play pretty soon. I've published a couple of blog posts on it in my Psychology Today blog. We also asked the question to the children, are you more calm or less calm than you were before school closed? Twice as many said more calm as who said less calm. We asked a similar question to the parents, are your children more or less anxious? And more parents said their children were less anxious now than they were before. So this is quite remarkable. And yet what we keep reading in the press in the United States is how stressed and how terrible this is for children. It turns out that the children are not doing that badly. I don't want to gloss over the fact that this is terrible for some people. I don't want to minimize the tragedy of this, and for families. And I can also say that the parents reported themselves to be more stressed. Their children were not more stressed, but understandably, I mean, they're losing jobs, they're worrying about paying the rent and so on and so forth. I can also say this study was done across economic groups, across race and so on. across age, from age 8 to 13 of the children. And basically the same results were true regardless of how you slice and dice it, looking at it. So that's what I've got to add about this. I can also say I'm a bicyclist, and I used to never see kids out on bicycles. As soon as schools closed, I saw kids out on bicycles. And in fact, in the state of Massachusetts that I live in, bicycles sold out. You couldn't buy a bicycle at some point. What a wonderful thing to happen. Kids are finally getting back to riding bicycles. So there's a silver lining to it, and I'm hoping that I think this is a later question, so I won't go on to it, but I'm hoping that something good comes out of this in the long run.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Zoe, do you have any advice, especially coming sort of from a self-directed environment where kids might be more used to sort of being on their own and coping with lots of time?
Well, I think that the one thing, really interesting what you were saying, Peter, that because that's just the kind of picture that you begin to get in your head, that it's all hype. But I think a lot of very conventional parents are finding it very, very hard because they think that homeschooling means putting the children down and teaching them what the teachers would be teaching them. And they're finding it incredibly difficult. And I think they're feeling as if they're failing because they're not good enough and they don't know how to do it. Whereas you see quite a few people in the media who are perhaps a bit more, they're not interested in our kind of education at all, but just circumstances have forced them, and they just say, I'm just letting my child do what they want to do, because if they choose they want to do science one day, let's just do it because it's good fun. So I think a lot of people are learning from their children, and learning that actually you can trust them to make decisions about it that will work. I don't think I've actually got any advice except let them get on with being kids and have as good a time as you possibly can when you're cramped up in either a small house or a small house and garden or wherever you are, but chill. This whole thing that's going around, I don't know if it's the same in America or across the world, but certainly in the UK, they're ruining their lives. They've lost a whole year of their lives. It's like, oh my God, loads of people pull out of school for 2 years and they still go on and get PhDs or whatever they want afterwards. It's just this constant fear mongering that all these poor, poor children have had a whole year of their lives ruined. It's going to be fine, and as Peter's proven from that research, a lot of them are having a really good time. So stop worrying, get on with it.
Thank you, Zoe. Ian and Kate, unless you want to add something to that, I'd like to morph the question into what Peter just suggested, whether this presents an opportunity, because you're both involved in sort of training and innovation and looking at new paradigms in education, and whether this is sort of an opportunity specifically for alternative ways of schooling as well, now that things have gone online and schools have been closed for quite a while in most places. Kate, I don't know if you'd like to.
I'll just add quickly to the one before and then lead into that, which we did a podcast with Dad when lockdown started last year called Learning from Home, where we spoke to parents around the world about how they were coping with it. And I think several issues that they were facing with things like not having clear instructions on what to do. And, Zoe, to your point, feeling like you had to replicate the school environment and that feeling of having to be everyone to everything. No, everything to everyone through all of this, it just added huge amounts of stresses. But actually where families were thriving, were realizing that maybe if they didn't do it exactly the way the teacher had said, or they added sort of a bit of a flair to the assignments and also embrace things like, if they had older kids, getting them to help with the younger kids, and there's cross-age learning, we know has so many benefits to it. But certainly, my daughter's not school age yet, but she is the most social creature I've ever come across. And there is definitely fear of the impact sort of for her age, she's 2.5, the development that this, the impact on her, sort of how she becomes as a person because she's had a year with no social interaction with kids her age. That's scary from my perspective. But certainly I think, and you can't take away the fact that for some families and some kids going, getting a good exam result is at the moment, the way the current system set out, is their ticket to a better life. So to then answer the next question, God, I really hope so. I really hope that this is the turning point, that this is what we needed to shift because, you know, we have all these opportunities from school systems around the world closing the way that they've been operating before. We've got parents being able to see under the hood, and that, I don't know if anyone read that Michael Rosen article for The Guardian about fronted adverbials. You know, all these parents suddenly wondering, why, I don't even know what a fronted adverbial is. Why is it so important that my kid knows how to use that in a sentence? I genuinely don't know what they are at all. But then the state of California deemed me grammar incompetent twice, according to their testing. So I probably wouldn't know. We have such an opportunity through the pandemic to take stock of what it is that we're racing back to. And you know, there's big panic that exams might not be happening or happening in a different way. There's such an opportunity. And this is a shameless quote of a friend of ours, Ted Dintersmith, who's doing an amazing project in the US called What Schools Could Be. He talks about, you know, we talk about this lost year of education. What if it was the founder of education? What if we take the learnings from this and actually, you know, take stock? And to your point, Peter, parents realizing that there are certain aspects of not being in school that is actually really great for their kids. So yes, I think there's an amazing opportunity here, and I hope it has a lasting impact. I really hope we never go back. It would be such a wasted opportunity if we went straight back to the way things were before. But we'll have to fight to not go back to the way things were before. I think there'll be such a push to kind of go back and do better what we did before, or do more of what we did before, because the risk of innovating is always scary, particularly at moments like this. But there's another really beautiful quote from Dad. He said, the more complex the challenges of the world become, the more we need creative solutions to deal with them. And, you know, we are facing some of the most complex challenges we've ever faced around the world. So we certainly need a new approach to deal with them moving forward.
Thank you. Ian?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's been said so far. I mean, one of the problems this second time around is that the teachers have got more organised, which is a real problem, because I was talking to a parent the other day where they have to report in every day on what the student's been doing. They have to send a video in of them reading and things like that. I mean, it's horrendous. So it's a big problem that the teachers have got more organised. In our case, with our 40 students, we've got 4 Zoom channels on the go all the time. I agree with people. A lot of it is about people wanting to socialise, to be talked to their friends, and it's Zoom is obviously a poor substitute for hugs, but it's there, and we just keep the Zoom channels, and we've got a Discord for people who want to chat. We've got students coming on in bed, you know, at 9 o'clock in the morning, because, you know, why would they get up at 9 o'clock in the morning if they're a teenager? And we're delivering laptops and tablets and musical instruments to people's homes, and people are really learning a huge amount. I mean, we've got a number of students who've just learned musical instruments during this time that they probably wouldn't have felt they wanted to do. And it's not easy to do music over, but our music guy is pretty good at dealing with lags and things. And our IT guy, I mean, they're doing amazing stuff in terms of creating games with software that I don't understand, like Unity and Python and stuff. And yes, there are some who really are desperate to get back in. We've got a very autistic boy with a disabled mother on a small boat in the marina, and obviously it's pretty darn tough. So we're desperate to get them in. In terms of the second question about the impact, well, just yesterday, I got the first piece of research I've seen. This is from 3 schools of biological sciences in English universities. All of them have said they compare the results for students from 2019 who'd sat the advanced levels, which is our British 18 plus exam, with the 2020. And they found no difference. The students who didn't take exams are doing just as well as the students who did. And what they also say, I haven't read the whole paper because it only came out yesterday, and it's a very rigorous paper. But I mean, they say things like, well, the course of normal exams is about stuffing a lot of facts into your head in the biological sciences, and I know this because I was a chemist, and so I took science qualifications. You pack all this and then you forget about them during the summer vacation, and so actually the impact of people not doing A-levels has been 0. And hopefully there may be a generation coming through which are a bit freer and a bit more demanding in the university world to try and get universities to change away from their ossified ways of operating. So I think that the notion of this having a lasting impact is the bad side doesn't seem to be there as far as I can see, and I agree with Peter in terms of probably we'd have similar results in the UK if we did a survey. I've not seen anybody do that. But it's just a lot of talk from the education establishment that's trying to justify its ways of working, and I think that's really sad.
Thank you. Peter, would you like to add anything to the chances that we might have?
Yeah, I would. I might also add that there actually was a study in the UK, similar results to ours. This was a group that looked just specifically at anxiety. It's a group that had been studying anxiety among 14-year-olds in the UK. And they were curious, by their measure of anxiety, had anxiety gone up or down among the population of 14-year-olds? And what they found is that it had gone down. They reported this as a surprise. It was no surprise to me. There was also another study in the United States, similarly a group that had been studying mental health among teenagers, and they also reported, to their surprise, that mental health was improved by their measure during the pandemic period. And yet we continue to read reports in the popular press about how terrible this is for children's mental health, as well as for their futures, because they're not becoming, quote, educated. So in terms of the long run effect of this, you know, I've been accused of sometimes being overly optimistic, and maybe I am overly optimistic, but I think that it is going to have positive long-term effects. We're already beginning to see that. So in the United States, in the August of 2019, the Gallup poll found that 5% of American families with school-age children were homeschooling. When they did this same study a year later, in August of 2020, after the pandemic, that had jumped up to 10%. Now, these are not people who are doing school at home. These are people who are registered as homeschoolers and not doing the public school at home. So this was a doubling of the number of homeschoolers. Now, some of them, I'm sure, are just temporarily doing it because they don't like the online lessons. They don't like the not knowing from day to day or week to week what's going to be happening in school. But I'm hearing from more and more of these people who are telling me that they're thinking they're not going to send their children back to school after this is all over, because there's a large number of people involved in this, and because their kids all want friends, there's more and more sort of pods forming, groups of people forming to get together so their kids can get together, little micro schools forming, and so on and so forth. I don't think this is going to just suddenly disappear once that vaccine is out there and we're over the pandemic. I think this is going to continue. I'm also hearing increasingly from school superintendents, from people saying, you know, they're beginning to think, as with this pause, they're beginning to rethink what they're doing. Some of them have read some of my writings and some of the reports about how stressed school kids are about school. They're beginning to understand it. And so I think there will be some reforms in schools themselves, although my hope for the future does not come from a belief that the school system is going to reform itself. My hope for the future is that it becomes irrelevant over time as more and more people leave it.
Thank you, Peter. Zoe, do you think there is an opportunity here with the pandemic?
I think it's already been said, really. I think that, yes, there is an opportunity. Yes, a lot of people are seeing things at home, learning more about their children and the way their children work. And I think there may be change, but I'm very unoptimistic, I'm afraid, about governments and officialdom. Perhaps that's because I've never really had any good dealings with them, as Ian will know. So I love to share your optimism, Peter, and I hope it goes that way. But I have, my father was a pessimist, and I think I'm probably a bit of a pessimist as well. But let's hope, fingers crossed, and we're all here to show them the way if they need to be shown.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, there's one more thing I might add, which I see as a hopeful thing. Enrollments in university is down greatly for a variety of reasons. And more people are recognizing, hey, you don't necessarily have to go to university. That's not the be all and end all. And right now, going to university is the driving force of a lot of the problems that children are facing in the United States, because it's all about childhood has been turned into a period of resume building for getting into university. That's where all this stress, a lot of this stress comes from. And more people, partly because universities in the United States have priced themselves out. You know, it's so expensive to go. And now more and more people can't afford because of the economic crisis that's been created. And also, you know, because at least for now, it's questionable about whether it's worthwhile spending all that money to go to university when you're not even there in person. So there's a lot being talked about and written about of, do we really need to go to university? And I think that's a positive development. I think that will continue on.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I think we sort of have time for one more, hopefully, one more question before we move on. And this is I think all of us here agree that, you know, self-directed democratic or various wonderful combinations of that and other alternative approaches are the way forward. Why isn't the world full of those schools, and what are the sort of the barriers that are keeping that from becoming the mainstream in a sense? And Kate, would you like to?
Sure. I will give that a go. I think there are several reasons for why we've been talking, at least I have on my end, a lot for years, and I know everybody else has really, about why education systems, traditional ones, are so hard to change. You know, fundamentally, everything that we take for granted, you know, from our systems of education to our systems of democracy to the way we organize our cities, our buildings, our workplaces, are man-made systems. They you know, they didn't come with the earth as a package. They're systems that we've designed and put in place. And we know, you know, that the current traditional systems of education were put in place to meet the needs of the world that are so spectacularly different from the one that we live in now, that we've lived in for a very long time. And were never designed to help every child ever. Again, I'm like a walking, talking quote book of my dad at the moment, but another beautiful quote from his, he said that school systems thrive on conformity, but human life is built around diversity. You know, we have such a diverse range of talents and interests and passions that a traditional system of education is never designed to it just can't by design cater to. Something like democratic education is so vitally important to how certainly democratic societies function. You know, kids get to 18 and we expect them to understand the responsibility of being in a democracy, of what their vote means and everything, without ever having sort of really talked to them about it. Maybe one class sort of a week about it, but without them ever having really experienced it. So and then we wonder why we keep ending up in these situations where democracy isn't thriving the way that it should. It's one of those ones where you think, you know, why do these problems keep happening? You think, well, stop causing the problems and they will stop happening. It's that definition of madness, being, you know, to keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. None of which answers the question why, you know, how we can create this around the world. But I think, and I'll defer to other people who know more about that than I do, but just to say that it's so vitally important, you know, whether all schools need to be 100% democratic or whether they all need to have some mass, you know, just the very nature of not trusting children to make their own decisions, not treating children like they're humans, you know, that they're guilty before proven innocent, assuming that if you say to kids they don't have to come to class, that then they will never show up and they will never learn and they will be complete failures, when all the evidence goes, you know, completely to the others. I think it fundamentally comes down to seeing children as human beings, as opposed to commodity and data points.
Thank you. Zoe, sort of a slightly altered question. Why isn't every child going to a Summerhill of some form or another?
I think basically fear. I think people are afraid because it's something they don't understand, because if you haven't seen children being able to make decisions and live lives in which they have control and come out of it as successful, happy, well-balanced people, then it frightens you. You know, you say to the average punter, the average parent, you know, how would you feel about your child having a say in what time they go to bed at night? And they throw their hands up in horror. I mean, people are not accustomed to it and they've never they've never experienced it, so naturally it's frightening. But you know, our own experience at Summerhill is that a huge range of people with very different ideas and thoughts will come and visit. And although there'll be some things that they may find they can't really accept, but the overall picture, when they've spoken to the children at Summerhill and they've watched them, they go away thinking, ah, this is interesting. You know, there's something going on here that interests me. So I think it's general fear of society of giving children control because they've never experienced it before.
Thank you, Zoe. Ian, would you like to add something to what the barriers are and maybe even how to overcome them?
Yeah, well, one might be a bit of heresy in this meeting is that I don't use the word child because, and I talk about young persons in our college, or they're aged 9 to 16, because by some people categorizing a group of people as subhuman, less than human, are called children, you are then licensed to do things to them, like beat them and things. And we only, you know, it's not that long ago when we stopped corporal punishment in schools. So that's one thing. There's something in our language. And if you think that schools have been a relatively recent invention in human history, and for most of human history, hunter-gatherer bands and still indigenous people, their language doesn't necessarily have a word called child like we do. The language can trap you into a way of thinking, I think. That's one thing. I think the second thing is that I think a lot of people don't really understand politicians. I've worked with a lot of politicians. The thing that is of interest to a politician is power, more than anything else. If you're not in power, it's not much use. So if you're in British Parliament, if you're in opposition, it's kind of wasting time ready to get into power. And so the desire to have power over other people, I mean, what's happened in the UK is increasingly state control. We didn't used to have a national curriculum, and now we do. We now have more schools that are state-run, and they used to be part of the local authority, and now they're not. They're run directly from the government. So what you've got basically is democracy is a bit of a facade, and I find also that, therefore, again, I've kind of stopped using the word democracy about our college a lot of the time. Sometimes I do, but other times, democracy has become a way for elected oligarchy to then, in our case, rule for 5 years and to do what they like. We see that, we saw that in its worst, of course, in the USA up until recently. You elect people and they can then wreak havoc because they want to fulfill their desire for power over people. And I think most human beings don't get that because they think of other people as kind of like themselves. And the notion that politicians are a separate species, especially at the governmental level, the top level, is difficult for people to get hold of. Therefore, it's really difficult dealing with this. And I think that there's a very good book by Rajan called the three pillars, the third pillar, because what he's saying is basically the arguments in the country are between what the state does and what the market does. So basically left wing is state and right wing favors the markets. But he's saying what's missing is community, and that why call what our college is a community. So, and Summerhill is a community. And in that sense, it's not a school in the sense of like, because it's a community and it works as a community, and communities work as communities. Our little community where I live, you know, we get on with each other, and you know, people setting up a food bank for poor people. There's no state involved or no market involved in that. It's a community, and what we have to do is to resurrect that and to get more power into communities. And we have to take it to ourselves. We have to have skin in the game. We have to get out there and do it, unless we take them on. And we have, you know, Zoe's mentioned the problems that Summerhill's had with national politicians, and we've had our local politicians, and the Stalinists in the local Green Party and the Labour Party would like to close us down. Luckily, we have support from a gay libertarian Tory businessman, conservative businessman. And I mention the fact he's gay because he will remember a time when being gay was illegal and you could get locked up for it, and the role of the state had to be removed from that world, as in other worlds where people are discriminated against, and we still have that in our culture. So in terms of him, he doesn't want the state to be involved, and he'll support us. Trouble is, they're in a minority locally, but we would like the Conservatives to get back in our local council because they'll support us, as opposed to the Green Party and the Labour Party who want to close us down. And they want to close us down because they want to control us and control kids, and they want power, and we have to resist that power.
Thank you, Ian. Peter, any ideas on how?
Yeah, let me say, just so it's not a surprise, in about 10 minutes, I'm going to have to leave because I've got another thing going on. I'll try to be quick about this question. I very much agree with Zoe. I think that sort of as an evolutionary psychologist, one of the first things we can say about human beings is we're creatures of norms. We couldn't have human society if we were not creatures of norms. But one of the unfortunate things about that is some norms get passed along which are harmful, you know, like foot binding in China in the past. And the norm of schooling is in that category. Schools were started at a historical time when we believed that people were born sinful. And the purpose of schools was to drive the sinfulness out of children. It was very clear in the writings of the people who founded the early schools that are the predecessors of schooling today. I don't think most of us believe that today. Many people maybe still do, but most of us don't. But we've still got schools that were founded on the idea that the primary purpose of school is to drive free will out of children and to teach them to obey. And schools are set up for that purpose. Now, most of us today are into at least 3 generations of schooling. We don't know, most people don't know what it would be like to grow up without schooling. So to not send your child to school, as it's usually defined, is to not follow a social norm, which means you're being abnormal. And nobody wants to be abnormal, right? It takes a very courageous person to violate social norms. So I've long been a fan of the tipping point theory of social change. It takes a few brave people. Maybe it takes 100 years for more and more people to be moving by those brave people. At some point, we get to enough people who are doing this new way of thinking about education that it's no longer so abnormal. And when it's no longer so abnormal, more and more people begin to do it. And at some point, everybody knows somebody who's doing it. And that's the point where the floodgates open. So that's part of my optimism. I think we're getting towards the tipping point. I hope I see it in my lifetime. I'm taking good care of my health for that purpose.
Could I respond to that very quickly?
Yes, of course.
All right, just very quickly. Just to totally agree with you, Peter. We're very quick to assume that things, because we're used to things happening that quickly. If a website takes more than 3 seconds to load, you panic and think, why is this taking so long? But the Enlightenment took 2 centuries, and that actually I think has a lot to answer for, as well as the amazing contributions it gave us. And that we are, I think, fundamentally in a paradigm shift. And that often in paradigm shifts, you think that the old has to totally disappear for the new one to be valid, but quite often they coexist for a time together before the new becomes taken for granted. And I do think if we look back over the past 100 years, the work that A.S. Neil did and everything that's happened since, there is so much more awareness now of it. And it's through the work of places like Summerhill. Also, just the other thing that keeps coming up in the chat I've noticed is people talking about money. Which is right. Private schools absolutely, are a barrier to a lot of people being able to attend, but there's no reason why having the majority of state schools or all state schools operate in a democratic fashion would cost them more money. I think actually there's arguments that it would probably cost them less, and first, certainly economically, not having to pay as much money as we do to solve the problems that standardized education solves would be a huge economic benefit. Would save us a lot of money. And actually, the last thing I'd say is that there's a lot that happens in standard traditional schools that aren't actually mandated anywhere in law, like the way the timetables operated or the way the classrooms are set up, or even, the amount of homework that needs to be assigned. It is, Peter, like you said, it's the norm, and it's the things we take for granted. And that is one thing I hope comes from the pandemic, is that we really take stock of what the norm is. But just to say that I do think we're in a paradigm shift, and that things take a lot longer, I think, than we expect them to these days, but it doesn't mean they aren't happening.
Thank you. I think this sort of gives us an idea of, what a collection of a few thousand brave people on a field in Suffolk will be like in about a year and a half. And hopefully that, helps a little bit towards that tipping point and, spreads the word that the norm isn't necessarily the best thing. Thank you, everyone, for agreeing to speak to us and answer some questions. I think we've gone terribly over our hour already, so we're going to end here. There will be an informal sort of Q&A for anybody who wants to stick around afterwards, also with some logistical questions about potentially how to get involved or Summerhill and other things. But we wanted to announce the winner of the ticket. There was a draw, and I think the person is still here, I've been told. Now it is a long name, and I'm going to hopefully manage to identify the person just by the first name. And it is a Ginte or Ginte. If that is you, turn on your mic.
Is it me?
Yes, it is you.
Hello.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You are the winner of the ticket. The best thing, probably, or the easiest thing, if you contact us via Facebook and send us a message with your details, or the website, there's an email on there, and then we can get all that sorted and send you your wonderful free ticket. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
So that concludes sort of the official part of this event and the taster and the celebrations of the Summerhill Centenary. And I know that Henry's going to stick around to answer some questions. If you have questions that you would like to pose, please write them in the chat or under the live Facebook feed. And we are collecting them, and I will try to ask as many as possible if you have any questions.
Yeah, obviously we have gone over for about half an hour or so, but we'll just try and do some questions and we can see how it goes. Again, just from my side, I just want to have a personal thanks to the panelists, but also just all of the other, there's lots and lots of lovely, really interesting things coming up in the chat that people were sharing, and just thank you all so much for being a part of it all.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you everybody for coming. It's been really lovely, and I might stay for a bit, or I might pop off for a bit, but it's been lovely to have everybody here, and I'm really looking forward to next year and getting on that field.
Yes. Yes.
So goodbye and thanks.
Thank you, Zoe.
And thanks, Henry, for leading today, and Philip for your sharing of sessions.
Yeah.
I'm going to stick around as well if Q&A people want.
Thank you.
Has Peter gone? Yeah.
Yeah, he had to.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
Well,
that was odd.
I'm looking for questions. I haven't seen any yet.
Well, if there's no questions, we can just share love. That's all right as well. Whatever's fine. Oh yeah, we don't need questions to share love. We can just share love anyway. Oh yeah.
Well, I'd love to have a moment, if I may, Henry and Philip. Richard, I've been cluttering up the chat column. I'm involved with IDEC, Arrow, Uniting for Children, Youth, Unschooling School. This big effort for us to really try to grab public attention, to hit that tipping point. And I don't think that from my 50 years of working these ideas that we've ever really attacked the problem of how do we hit that tipping point. And so I'm working with others with the idea that maybe we can start to use November 20th, World Children's Day, as a time where we all stand up together and maybe create enough of an event that we get noticed. And if we can get noticed on the world stage once, we can do it again, and gradually we'll be too visible to be ignored. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at groups like IDEC and Arrow, and with IDEC, obviously the Summerhill Festival, as ways that we start to orchestrate this global effort. And a group of us have been meeting recently how we can orchestrate this, and 3 people. There's a fellow from India, one from Finland, and another person from Canada, Alberta, that are going to be giving a a presentation or holding a workshop at the AeroX conference, which comes up in just a couple of weeks. I have information about it in the chat. And if we can get momentum going, I just feel that, as Peter Gray said, that we're near that tipping point. I think we can put ourselves over the top with all the fuss around the pandemic right now and really get this collection of ideas around, Ian, I'll use the word democratic schools, that we can really get that on the agenda out in the public consciousness. So if you would do me the favor of looking at what I've posted in chat, just before I stop, I'd like to bring your attention to a group that I've recently started working with. It's called CHIP, which is the Child Health is Planetary Health. And it's an opportunity for us to partner with medical clinicians, pediatricians, and with environmentalists, so that we begin to address the UN sustainability goals in unison, more or less, in partnership, and that can strengthen our hand as well.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah.
We just have a question in the feed, and I think, Ian, you might be interested or a good candidate to answer it, about how or what state teachers can do, or what teachers in state schools or public schools can do to bring a bit of the sort of attitude towards children into their classroom. So I know you've worked with teachers in regular schools.
Yeah, we go into schools and offer to run the program just as we would with a business organization. So we said, I mean, the schools are often got young people that they have a problem with, or they might be in and out of what's called exclusion in the UK. I mean, in other words, they're in line for getting kicked out of the school, or they're not performing. And it's an opportunity for us to go in and say, well, we'll run a group. We have 6 students in a group. We run a number of groups, and the groups will decide for themselves on their own rules. The individuals in the groups will decide totally what they want to learn and work on. We'll meet every week for an hour or so, and then do other things as well. And we've done those in about 7 or 8 schools. And it's been independently evaluated by the University of Brighton, where people have talked about as life-changing experiences, which kind of surprises. And paradoxically, it can be easier going to work in a school than running our college, because when we're going to school, it's such a comparison with the rest of their lives. So they say simple things like, well, it's nice not to be shouted at, or it's nice to actually sit down and be on first name terms with somebody instead of calling teachers sir and miss and bizarre things like that, or that they could ask for things and they get done. So whereas our students kind of almost get blasé, they take it for granted that they can ask for anything and make it happen. And then if it doesn't happen, which sometimes does, they get grumpy about it. Whereas when we work in schools, we never get any grumpy students, because they're going, wow, you mean I can ask for anything I want, I can talk about anything I want, so long as I don't disrespect other people and obey the ground rules that the group has created. And so I know there's Derry's online, and he's done work in schools as a school teacher, which is a different kind of category, and he's published something, and I'm sure people could get in touch with Derry Hannum to find that from him. Our experience has been, as I say, going in from the outside, and it also is easier, I think, than being an outsider. I think for school teachers, it's very difficult, especially in the current climate. But I tend to want to challenge teachers a lot and to say, well, if you want to be seen as a profession, then there's 2 things a profession needs to do. One is to work to all the available evidence, and 2 is to have a moral sense of your role and your duty towards the people you're working with. And so start with that and look at the evidence, like all young people are different. So how do you deal with them, the fact that they're all different? How do you deal with the fact that summer-born children in our culture are discriminated against? How do you deal with race issues? And interestingly, in our college, the biggest minority in the UK are mixed race young people, and who get the worst bullying in schools. And how do you deal with those kind of things to make certain that bullying doesn't happen, for instance? And it's much more important than whether people get good GCSEs or pass exams. as to whether we know from all research, well-being amongst the teen years is the most important predictor of future life satisfaction, not grades. And whoever said on their deathbed, I wish I'd got more grades in my exams. You know, it's so I think that teachers can make those claims, and of course that means taking a risk. But for me, the bigger risk is not to do it. You know, is teachers take a risk when they call it out and say, yes, everyone is different, and everybody should be equally valued in this school. But they have a hard job doing it. And I have a lot of sympathy with teachers. I wouldn't do it and couldn't do it because I wouldn't work in a school. But you know, people are doing it, and good luck to them.
Can I jump in, Philip, for a second?
Yes, please do. Please do.
Because I introduced Summerhill to one class, fully expecting to get fired. And the great thing that helped me, I think, was that this was a secondary modern school, and these kids had just been failed. They'd been dealt a traumatic blow by the system, told they were useless at the age of 11, which gave me a lot of support from parents. But I thought I'd get fired. I introduced democracy, first name terms, kids making their own rules, kids studying projects that they were interested in. I thought I'd get fired, but I didn't. I got put in charge of 7 classes the second year with 60% of the curriculum time. I never did get fired. I've just written a book about that first experiment. And the problem is taking other teachers with you. I moved on. I got promoted to be head of a big department in a 2,000 kids school and ended up as acting principal of a comprehensive school, always taking these ideas forward. And it is possible. You end up making some painful compromises and wishing that there were teacher colleges that were actually producing young people who wanted to work in this kind of way, but it is possible. I think we've been through a terribly depressing time in the UK with the national curriculum, more and more emphasis on testing. We've got a testing system that sets out to fail 33% of our kids. It's a national scandal. The system is designed to fail thousands and thousands of young people. But there is a move afoot to do something about it. I was at a meeting yesterday with people from all parties in the House of Commons, a number of progressive schools within the state system in England demanding a better approach to assessment. And we're coming at it that way because then you say, well, why the hell have we got GCSE? I think there's a real possibility of getting to GCSE. I'll shut up. But my current programme is to argue that immediately 20% of curriculum time in all state schools should be negotiated around the interests and passions, self-directed and self-managed by the students themselves. It still leaves the state 80%, for God's sake. That ought to be enough. Let's have 20% as a foot in the door for self-directed learning in all schools. Just negotiating the process would have a transformative effect. I've seen it do that. For the first time, adults realize that young people have got serious opinions and can really take responsibility for their own learning. So I'm running this campaign, a 20% campaign. If anyone would like to support it or find out more about it, my email's in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Derry. We have a very quick practical question from someone. I think Henry or Zoe could answer that. Where can they buy one of those centenary books, the Summerhill Centenary book?
It's on our website.
Yeah, off our website, off the Summerhill website. That's not the Centenary website. So www.summerhillschool.co.uk. And you can get hold of them there.
It says that it's the shop. There isn't really anything in the shop except that you can donate to the trust or you can buy that book. We really want to get it out there because it's just so nice and so simple.
Then there have been quite a few questions about sort of how to get the word out about this kind of education to politicians and the wider sort of school community. And even from personal experience, you know, even mentioning Summerhill, which is quite well known to teachers, often they think it's a historical anecdote that it happened in the past, but it doesn't exist anymore. And sort of maybe does alternative education have a publicity issue that people just don't know enough about it, or that it exists to make choices? Zoe, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think one of the things, I think there's a lot of things that we can do and must do. I think one of the things that we maybe better to steer away from a little bit is the word democracy and democratic. For me, I find at the moment it's becoming very much more political, and Summerhill has been a part of the democratic school movement, but actually I would say that Summerhill isn't really a democratic school. It's actually a free school, and a free school for childhood, and a school for children to be in control of their lives, and the democracy is the tool which we use. And I'm just a little bit concerned, I think, listening from what Ian was saying as well, that it can switch people off to hear that word democratic school, because it becomes more frightening. Oh, you're talking about a school in which all of the children are going to be making all of the decisions. And actually, as Kate was saying, small steps, little steps. We need to move a little bit at a time. And that doesn't mean giving all the children everywhere all this incredible freedom and democracy because it scares people off. So for me, I think one of the things we could do would be to turn that down a bit and think more about autonomy, freedom, childhood. There must be many self-directed learning, whatever. There's lots and lots of different phrases you can do. Progressive schooling, lots of different names, but I'm a bit concerned that the word democracy is becoming rather political.
Henry, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think sort of interlinking with that, coming at the angle of childhood and talking about values, I think is something that we all unite with and we all share, and I think that there's something with that that's a very powerful and important. And I also want to reference and connect back to what Ian Cunningham was saying about community. Of the local, the thing is that what seems to happen, and we've all got this as a little bit of a problem, is that we're sort of classed as the alternatives, the different ones that are doing things differently. And I think actually, when we're actually talking about the values of what we're actually doing, we're talking about relationships, we're talking about play, we're talking about, emotional sincerity, well-being, we're talking about fulfilled childhoods. And these are actually all things that everybody as human beings all want to be seeing more of. They will see within the COVID times that children are having time to breathe, the conversations all earlier, they're having time to actually have a childhood, and how important that is. And this is, and what I sort of feel is really important is that the people down the road, the people, our neighbors, everybody sort of realizes that it's not, I think almost when you're talking about things about systems of education and things like that, then we're talking about creating a system that is going to solve all of our problems. But in the end, actually, we want to create a system that evolves naturally. We want to have looseness, as Peter Gray was saying, whether we want to even remove systems. And the whole point is we want to just alleviate the pressures. And I think normalizing it, and that's why for me, I feel I like to move away from specific sort of someone saying this methodology or this, or we should do this, or we should categorize to this or this, when actually we're talking about quite simple, relationships, social interaction, community, freedoms and equalities. All of these sort of things are all things that we should be just doing. And I think normalizing things like that is a better way of coming at it, because that affects the state system, it affects the home life, it affects communities, it affects all of us, and we all resonate with those things. And I think that's, should I say, easier, more palatable, maybe.
Yeah, Derry, do you want to add something, and then Zoe?
I just want to say I'm going to have to leave now. I have a bit of a eating problem, and I don't have any. I have diabetes, and I need to just do my blood. So lovely to see everybody, and bye bye. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of the afternoon. So
bye, Zoe.
Derry.
Yeah, I think we should stress, Ian hinted at this, but we should stress the total disconnect between what school is doing to young people and what the world of the future, and not just the future, the world now desperately needs in terms of facing up to climate change, etc. I read on World Economic Forum, the Davos lot, the Economist Intelligence Unit are producing report after report saying we need autonomous, creative, self-managing, collaborative young people, and we're not getting them out of the current school system. So what's happening now is disconnected from what the world needs, and we need to press this hard. It was a message that the politicians that I was involved with a couple of days ago are beginning to take on board, and people in the business world are beginning to say this more and more loudly. We ought to emphasize the kind of learning approaches that Ian's talking about and that I've been talking about are what both industry, society needs social entrepreneurs, business needs economic entrepreneurs, and the world needs creative people to cope with climate change. Another very encouraging thing is that young people are beginning to get organized and demand this for themselves. I would recommend everyone who doesn't know about it to have a look at an organization completely run by young people who are now making demands on politicians. They're getting somewhere. In Scotland, we've got an idiot as Minister of Education in England, and they're making no progress. But in Scotland, they are making progress. They're called Teach the Future, a wonderful bunch of young people. I really suggest you have a look at their website.
Thank you. We have a question about sort of mask wearing, but I think most of our schools are actually not open, so it isn't necessarily, or certainly in the UK, there isn't any mask wearing in schools. So not sure if somebody wants to jump in on that, but and that's pretty much it with questions, unless somebody wants to put something in the chat.
Well, we've done great for time so far, haven't we? I say we've done great for time. We're over by nearly an hour. But maybe we can just call it, end it here then, Philip. If there isn't anything else that's come up, we can send lots of love and bye to everybody. Maybe what are you thinking?
Yeah, and then see you throughout wonderful little events in this year, and then hopefully next summer. Well, 22, we'll continue all these chats in person.
Cool. Well, thank you all very much, and keep an update on, keep an eye on the Facebook and all of these, all of our social medias to keep an eye out for updates, and yeah, and we'll keep everybody informed. And obviously, see you all in 2022, summer of 2022, for that hug that I promised at the very beginning. Yes!
You'll be busy, Henry.
Huh?
You'll be busy.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I do hope so, yeah. Yeah, great. Okay, and thanks also to Ian Cunningham. And Derry, thank you for contributing as well. And to Kate Robinson and Peter Gray as well for joining us. And just so much love to you all. Thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you and speak to you all soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.